today we are going to teach to drive a manual. And so let's start with the beginnings. You got to always have your e-brake up. Make sure it's locked and loaded. Turn off the car. When you start a manual car, always make sure it's in neutral first. Once it's in neutral, you press the clutch in and the brake. And then I don't have a key, so we'll pretend that I'm turning the key. Oh, perfect. All right, so then make sure that it's in neutral. Best way, wiggle it back and forth, because if you're in first, it's only gonna wiggle. If you're in second, it's only gonna wiggle so much. But if you're in neutral, it's gonna like, yeah. All right, once you're in neutral, you can definitely just let go of the clutch, because pretty much being in neutral is like pushing down the clutch. Whereas if you were to let go of the clutch, but it was in first, the car stalls. And that is terrifying when you're first learning how to drive. All right, so make sure, neutral, e-brake down, foot on the brake. First thing you want to do is get familiar with the gears. It's a 6-speed. I have a 15 BRZ. I used to own a 240. I've had several cars. And just make sure, run through the gears, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. On the BRZ, it's you pull up, go left up, and that's reverse. On other cars, it could be right down if it's a 5-speed. It could be for Volkswagens, you push down, and same thing as left up, and you just push down. All right, so once you're comfortable turning on the car, figuring all that stuff out, easiest way to go about it is you put your foot on the clutch, put it in gear. First gear. Best way to do it, don't even give it any gas, nothing, just slowly release the clutch. And the car starts to pull. As you can tell over here on the RPMs, that it will start to die down a bit when it wants to go. And it'll definitely do that anytime as you slowly release the clutch. And if you get past the point where it starts to kind of like pull itself and you don't give it any gas, it will die and it will stall, just like I just did earlier. So first thing first, clutch in, gear up, and then you want to be comfortable. So let's go back. You want to be comfortable with your gas pedal. So you want to know where your gas pedal is at. Every gas pedal is different, every brake pedal is different, every clutch is different. But when you get your own manual car, obviously you're gonna adjust to your own car. When I first learned how to drive manual, it was actually a 1991 240SX. I had bought it down the street and it took me about 15 to 20 minutes, no lie, just to go from one side of the street to the other side of the street because I was scared I was gonna stall in the middle of the road. And so, you're gonna stall. It's just bound to happen. It's gonna happen. Just kind of like accept that. And once you accept that, you're no longer gonna be afraid. And it's gonna be the easiest thing in the world. The easiest way is I found that point, and this is how I've shown everybody that I've known. Find that point where it's about to die, and then start giving it a little bit of gas. That's how I learned myself. So, for example, it starts to die a bit. Right there, that little piece. Then you start giving it gas. So, and then you're in first. Clutch in, first gear. Foot off brake, still with the clutch in. Pull up slightly, and give it gas. All right, then you're gonna get comfortable. So a manual transmission does not have a torque converter, and that's pretty much what automatics have. So if I'm going around a bend like this and I let go of the gas, it's gonna feel like it's gonna go like that, and that's because like all that torque. For example, the same thing I do. Once you're in gear, you can fully let go of the clutch, and you could roll. But let's say it starts to like slow down a bit, and you give it gas. You might feel that, and you're gonna feel it for the rest of your life. You just slowly you figure out how to adjust to that, and it won't happen as bad. But you will bunny hop at first, and the bunny hop is that same exact thing. You go into first, and you kind of like check, and it's fine. You'll eventually like learn how to like wean it out. Reverse is exactly the same as first gear. So first, I'm really gonna focus on first gear because that's the hardest gear that there is. Because it's from where you're stopping to where you're going. And it's the same thing with reverse. So first, same thing with reverse. So like I said, mine goes up, left, up. And so you feel that piece where it's about to grab, and then you give gas. and then you're in reverse, and that's that. Once you're in gear, you can completely let go of the clutch. So do not like go into gear and then keep your foot on the clutch pedal, because that's, even that slight push down is going to slowly wear down your clutch, and you don't want to do that. There's a little plate, maybe it might not be a plate, it might just be like a little rubber boot, and it's a kick plate, and pretty much once you get out of gear, you just put it there and you just let it rest. So you're in first. Once you get out of first, completely let go of the clutch. Now it's like you're driving, if you have driven an automatic, now it's just like you're driving an automatic. You don't have to worry about anything. When I started to learn how to drive a manual, about around 2,500 to 3,000 is when I learned how to start driving a manual. So it's pretty good when you're actually trying to be more economical, because you're not spending as much power, you're not pushing as much power through the car. And so once you get to that point, it's just clutch in, second, and you don't have to be as light as you were when you have to get out of first or get out of reverse, because at that point the car's already rolling, so there's more dampening. And so same thing with third gear, you just go right up, and now it's like, now you're kind of just like letting go of the clutch as you give it gas. Let's say you get to a parking spot, right? Now, always make sure you're neutral, right? No matter how long you're gonna drive a manual car, you'll always see people wiggling this, and it's just to make sure you're always in neutral. It's just, it becomes a thing, right? Once you know you're neutral, let go of the clutch, keep the brake on, de-brake up. I have to adjust mine, that's why I'm like smacking all my water bottles back here, and I'm really short, so I only have so much reach. Make sure the car's turned off, right? You would probably have a key, shut it off. Your e-brake could fail, so you always want to make sure that you put clutch in and in first. People might say you don't have to put your clutch in, but sometimes it'll get like really stuck for whatever reason. And obviously if you push the clutch in, it's going to open that up and you can just throw it into first. And that way, in case this fails, your car won't roll and it will actually get stuck in that gear. And it's better for that to happen than have your car roll down a steep hill. All right. So once you're back in your car, you hop in your car, make sure it's in neutral. Once you know it's in neutral, again, clutch in, brake, turn on the car. Car's on, you can freely just let go of the clutch. Make sure to always have your foot on the brake when you release any type of, gear or e-brake when you start the car. All right. So my buddy Max just brought up something, and it was actually a problem for myself as well, and it's shifting while turning. Especially if you're a brand new driver, you're pretty much like this, like straight arm, and you're driving like this. I've seen it. I still see people drive like that. It's just like a nervous thing. I feel extremely comfortable driving. Max feels extremely comfortable driving. But when you are first learning how to drive a manual, I remember Max told me the story, was that his dad was teaching him, and as he was turning left or right, his dad said, "Okay, now shift." And he looked at his dad and he said, "That's impossible. You can't do that." And so you actually can, while you're turning in any direction, and you're kind of like in this like weird, I would say like you feel like you're kind of in this weird angle when you first start off. At least that's how I felt. I felt like I was like shifting like this, like it was very uncomfortable. But it's not too bad. So pretty much it's gonna be the same exact thing. Always watch where you're going. Where you're like gonna want to end up. And so when it comes to turning and shifting, it's the same exact thing. So you turn, make sure you know where you're going, put the foot down, and you will have to one-hand it for a bit. It's just, you can't, you're not gonna shift like this. I'm surprised I just was able to do that. But yeah, you're not gonna shift like that. So if you don't want to do it at first, it's fine. I mean, I've seen people drive manuals and learn how to drive manuals, and they are tacking that thing up. And what I mean by tacking it is, they get so scared to shift that they will drive until this thing pretty much, I don't know if you can hear that, but that's all the way up. I removed my muffler so the car is a little bit louder, but same thing. You could have two hands. Once you get to that point, that was a little rough because that was very late for me because I was thinking too hard to try and turn, and it's a natural feeling now, so that was way too abrupt. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. Once you come into that corner, you want to drive into that corner. You're gonna have to maneuver with your left hand. Shift probably into second or third or fourth. Also, it's not gonna be as smooth when you first learn how to drive manual. Even going into second, you can still hit it roughly. Like that that was ow. That hurt me. But just kind of give it that same notion. So pretty much like what you're doing when you're driving a manual car is your left foot's down and your right foot's giving it gas as it's coming up. So you're doing this motion. And once it starts moving, then you can just let go of the clutch and drive it. When you go into like second gear, it'll still be rough, is what I'm saying. It'll still be rough. So there is a possibility to feel what I just felt and what Max just felt, was that kind of like that slam. Once you get in the higher gear, like fourth, fifth, you're at higher speed, so like there's more dampening. But you're essentially gonna still do that same thing. So for example, let's go back to first gear, right? And I'm still gonna do that like light, but it's not gonna be as delicate as if I were to get out of first gear. You can definitely kind of throw it a little bit more. And by throw it, I mean it's just like release your clutch faster. So boom, second gear. And that was a smooth shift. The way I always told myself when I was learning how to drive manual was, it's not that I wanted to drive the smoothest. It was just, I told myself, drive how you would drive if you wanted to impress like your grandma. Like you don't want to disrupt grandma. Grandma's telling you this crazy story and you're enjoying it. You don't want her to like just all of a sudden just boom, like jump out of her seat. So that's like my mindset all the time when I was learning how to drive a manual, was shift as if grandma was sitting in the passenger side. So then I learned how to drive very, very smooth. Once if you drive a little bit more aggressive, then it's gonna come out a little bit more aggressive. There is also such a thing as being too low in a gear. And what that means exactly is like, for example, if I'm in first gear and then I haven't even hit that 25 to like 3,500 mark and I just shift, that's gonna happen because it doesn't have enough power. And same thing can happen if I'm going to like third. And it's just, we're actually just putting a lot of stress on the engine and the transmission. You're going uphill, especially. We don't have any uphills because we're in a parking lot. Oh, actually we have an uphill right there. It's exactly the same thing, except it's a little bit more scary because all of a sudden, as you start letting go of the clutch, your car starts to roll backwards. And if you don't like roller coasters and stuff like that, it's gonna terrify you at first. I love roller coasters, but that still scared the bejesus out of me. I remember going up my first hill, I actually gave it so much gas and I didn't release the clutch. And what that sounds like is pretty much like this. And I just saw Max on the other side just cringe hearing that. And you see people who are learning manual just do that all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it is something that you're gonna have to kind of like learn and more master. And what I mean master is the releasing of the clutch. So for example, I'm rolling back. I'm still gonna try to release it. You're just gonna give it a little bit more power than that. So maybe instead of like giving it like, around, I gave it an increase about like 300, 400 RPMs. You might give it into like 500 to like 600, depending on the hill, of course. Once like, you've mastered that, I mean, you could pretty much like shift or get out of any gear like at a really, really low RPM. For example, I could probably go like, I just increased it by 100 to 200, and it's just because I'm able to do that because I've done, I've been driving this for like 4 years. Not this car, but manual for like 4 or 3 years. So I'm used to that. But you will feel that fear, especially when you do a hill. I would recommend just kind of like doing this parking lot. We're in the back of a Sears parking lot right now. There's nobody here. There's one more person who's learning how to drive a car over there in a Camry. So definitely find yourself an empty parking lot. Depending on how badly you want to learn, you're gonna put the effort in just like anything in life. But it's something that you have to practice. You may get it first try. I know I've seen people get it first try, but that's what it is. It's a first try. Even sometimes I myself stumble around here and there, just for like whatever the situation is. I might not shift properly. I might, you know, almost stall, you know, just because of like the situation I'm in. So I mean, you're gonna stall, you're gonna feel scared at times, but the point is that, you know, you just want to put that practice in there, and just, you know, always start with the basics. Anything you ever do, just start with the basics. Once you master the basics, I mean, there's nothing else pretty much to do. But if you want to see any of the cooler stuff, more of like the heel toes, if you want to left foot braking, stuff like that, I mean, definitely give us a thumbs up and a like and a subscribe, and we could possibly like start that new playlist, you know, how to have fun with your manual car, I guess. And, you know, I'll bring like several cars. I'll bring a front wheel drive car out, which means the power is supplied only to the front wheels. This one's only rear wheel drive, so the power is supplied to the rear wheels. Max has a WRX basically, so it's all wheel drive. And yeah, we can, you know, pretty much show you the different driving styles if you'd like.